Get ready.
Congratulations!
Hogans Alley is a 1984 video game by Nintendo. It was one of the first games to use a light gun as an input device. The game presents the player with cardboard cutouts of villains and innocent civilians. The player must shoot the villains and spare the innocent people. "720 Degrees" or 720 is a 1986 arcade game by Atari Games. 720, a skateboarding game, is notable in that along with BMX Simulator, it is one of the first extreme sports video games and is unique time structure that requires a player score points in order to keep the game going. The game's name comes from the ultimate trick, turning a full 720 degrees in the air after jumping off a ramp. 720 Degrees has the player controlling the skateboarder by ripping around a middle-class neighborhood. By doing jumps and tricks, the player can eventually acquire enough points to compete at a skate park. Space Harrier is a third-person rail shooter video game released by Sega in 1985. It spawned several sequels like Space Harrier 3D, Space Harrier 2, or the spin-off Planet Harrier. Space Harrier was originally made for the arcade and later saw ports to many home games. Space Harrier's release on the Sega Master System is notable, as there were two versions. One was just like the arcade, while the other, entitled Space Harrier 3D, was actually a sequel. It was one of the first arcade games to use 16-bit graphics and Sega's Super Scaler technology that allowed pseudo 3D sprite scaling at high frame rates. With the ability to scale as many as 32,000 sprites and fill a moving landscape with them, along with 6,144 colours on screen out of a 98,000 colour palette, it also introduced a true analog flight stick for movement, with the ability to register movement in any direction as well as measure the degree of push, which could move the player character at different speeds depending on how far the stick is pushed in a certain direction. Mappy is a 1983 arcade game from Namco. In the United States, it was distributed by Ballet Midway. Mappy is a side-scrolling platform game that features cartoon-like animals, primarily cats and mice. The game's main character itself is a mouse. Mappy runs on a Namco Super PacMan hardware, modified to support horizontal scrolling. The name Mappy is likely derived from Mappo, a Japanese slang term for a policeman. Bad Dudes vs. Dragon Ninja, often referred to as simply Bad Dudes, and known in Japan as simply as Dragon Ninja, is a 1988 arcade game developed and published by Data East. It was also ported to many computer and game console home systems. The game was followed by a 1991 spiritual crossover, Two Crude Dudes. After Data East became defunct due to their bankruptcy in 2003, Gmode bought the intellectual rights to the arcade game as well as most of the Data East games and licensed them globally. The game is a side-scrolling beat-em-up where the players are set in the role of the titular heroes tasked with rescuing President Ronnie from ninja kidnappers. It was met with mixed critical reception, but has become widely known for its introduction cutscene.
Got it. I'm bad. Got it.
Hey, insert toy. I offer toy for my treasure chest. Ha 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 ha.
World of War is an arcade game from 1981, developed by Midway. It was ported to the Atari 8-bit family, Commodore 64, Atari 2600, Atari 5200, and renamed to The Incredible Wizard for the Bally Astrocade. The game was released as part of the compilations Midway Arcade Treasures 2 and Midway Arcade Origins.
Hurry back, I can't wait to do it again. Hey, insert toy.
Cabal is a 1988 arcade video game originally developed by TAD Corporation and published in Japan by Taito Corporation and in North America and Europe by Fabtech. In this game, the player controls a commando, viewed from behind, trying to destroy various enemy military bases. The game was innovative for the era and a modest success in the sales. Stargate is an arcade game released in 1981 by Williams Electronics, created by Eugene Jarvis. It is a sequel to the 1980 game Defender, and was the first of only 3 productions from Viz Kids, an independent development house formed by Jarvis and Larry DeMar. This video game has no connection to the subsequent Stargate franchise that began 13 years later. Tekken II is the second installment in the popular Tekken fighting game series. It was first released in arcades in 1995 and later released for the PlayStation in 1996. The original arcade version of the game was released in Tekken 5's Arcade History Mode for the PlayStation 2 in 2007, for the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Portable via the PlayStation Network, and in 2009 for Zeebo via ZeboNet. It was succeeded by the popular Tekken III, which came in 1997. Bombjack is an arcade platform game that was released in 1984 by Tekken. It was followed by 2 official sequels, the console and the computer title Mighty Bombjack, and the arcade game Bombjack Twin, and the licensed for computers only Bombjack 2. Dr. Mario is a 1990 Mario arcade-style action puzzle video game. Nintendo developed and published the game for the Nintendo Entertainment System and Game Boy consoles. The game focuses on a player's character Mario, who assumes the role of a doctor and is tasked in eradicating deadly viruses. In this falling block puzzle game, the player's objective is to destroy the viruses populating the on-screen playing field by using colored capsules that are dropped into the field. The player manipulates the capsules as they fall, so that they are aligned with viruses of matching colours, which removes them from play. The player progresses through the game by eliminating all the viruses on screen in each level. Dr. Mario received positive reception, appearing on several best Nintendo games of all time lists. The game has been ported, remade, or has had a sequel on every Nintendo home console since the NES, as well as the most portable consoles. Crystal Castles is an arcade game released by Atari Inc. in 1983. The player controls a cartoon bear by the name of Bentley Bear, who has to collect gems located throughout the trimetric projected rendered castles while avoiding enemies out to get him, as well as the gems. Crystal Castles is notable for being one of the first arcade action games with an actual ending, whereas most games at the time either continued indefinitely, ended in what was actually termed a kill screen, or simply just restarted to the first level and contain advanced warp zones. Super PacMan, released in Japan October 1982 and North America December 1982, is the third installment of the PacMan series of arcade games, and the second starring PacMan himself. It would also be the second game to be created by series originator Namco, as Mrs. PacMan was created without Namco's involvement. Lunar Lander is an arcade game released by Atari Inc. in 1979, which uses a vector monitor to display vector graphics. Although not particularly successful, the vector graphics generator of the arcade game was the impetus of Atari's most successful coin-operated game, Asteroids. The object of the Lunar Lander game is to pilot a lunar landing module to the safe touchdown on the moon. Released in August 1979, approximately 4,830 units were produced. Hang On is an arcade game released by Sega in 1985. It is the world's first full-body experience video game. In the game, the player controls a motorcycle against time and other computer-controlled bikes. It was one of the first arcade games to use 16-bit graphics and Sega's superscaler technology that allowed pseudo 3D sprite scaling at high frame rates. The game is also built into some versions of Sega Master System. The title is derived from when a biker is turning and has to hang on to the bike while their bike is leaning, which Suzuki had read in a Japanese bike magazine. Though Suzuki learned later the technique was called hang off in North America, nevertheless he chose to keep the former name. Seawolf is an arcade game by Midway. Originally released in 1976, it was a video game update of an earlier coin-operated electromechanical Midway game, Sea Devil, itself based on Sega's 1966 coin-op electromechanical arcade submarine simulator Periscope. Midway's video game version was designed by Dave Nutting and eventually sold 10,000 video game arcade cabinets. A color sequel, Seawolf 2, was released in 1978 that sold another 4,000 units. Knights of the Round is an arcade game released by Capcom in 1991, a side-scrolling beat-em-up loosely based on the legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. The game features a role-playing video game-like level advancement system, with fighters automatically being upgraded to new weapons and armor as they advance through the game. Donkey Kong 3 is the third video game in the original Donkey Kong series by Nintendo. It was released near simultaneously for the Family Computer and Arcade, and later released in America on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1986. The game was re-released on the Wii Virtual Console in North America on July 14, 2008, and in Europe on January 9, 2009. Although it is a sequel, the title is a radical departure in gameplay from previous titles. Donkey Kong 3 was also the first game to bear the current Donkey Kong logo. Rolling Thunder is a side-scrolling action game produced by Namco, originally released as a coin-operated arcade game which ran on the Namco System 86 hardware. It was distributed internationally outside Japan by Atari Games. The player takes control of a secret agent who must rescue his female partner from a terrorist organization. Rolling Thunder was released for various computer platforms in 1987 and the Family Computer and Nintendo Entertainment System in 1989. The original arcade game has also been included in various classic game compilations as well. Galaga 88 is a 1987 fixed shooter arcade game by Namco. It is the third sequel for Galaxian. It features significantly improved graphics over previous games in the series, including detailed backgrounds, larger enemies, and greater ship details. Although it was well received, fewer cabinets of the game were produced than Galaga and gapless. The game runs on a Namco System 1 hardware. It was later re-released in North American TurboGrafx-16 under the name Galaga 90, and the Sega Game Gear in Japan under the name Galaga 91, and in Europe under the name Galaga 2. Valyx is a maze and driving arcade game that was released by Namco in 1980 and licensed to Midway Games for US manufacture and distribution in 1981. It is the first game to have background music. Also, it was the first game from the company to feature the special flags, which would become a recurring object in later games. It was the first game to feature a bonus round, and the first of only 3 Namco games of its time period whose score displayed did not roll over at 1 million. The object is for the player car to capture all the flags scattered around the field before the red car catches it. It also features an early example of a radar to show the cars and flags locations on the map. Cadillacs Dinosaurs is a 1993 arcade game by Capcom. It is a side-scrolling beat-em-up based on the comic book series Sonic Tales. The game was produced as a tie-in with the short-lived Cadillacs and Dinosaurs animated series, which aired during the same year the game was released. Tekken III is the third installment in the popular Tekken fighting game series. It was released for arcades in March 1997 and for the PlayStation in March to September 1998. The original arcade version of the game was released in 2005 for the PlayStation 2 as part of the Tekken 5's arcade history mode. Tekken 3 is still widely considered one of the greatest games of its genre and of all time. With more than 8.5 million copies sold worldwide, Tekken 3 is the 5th best-selling PlayStation game of all time. It was the first game to release by Namco System 12 hardware. It is also the last installment of the series for the PlayStation. A non-canon sequel was released in 1999 and 2000 in arcades and PlayStation 2 respectively, titled Tekken Tag Tournament, followed by the canon sequel Tekken IV in arcades and PlayStation 2 in 2001 and 2002 respectively.
Game over.
Killer Instinct is a fighting game developed by Rare and published by Midway and Nintendo. It was released as an arcade game in the summer of 1994 and the following year ported to the Super Nintendo Entertainment System and the Game Boy. The game's plot involves an all-powerful corporation organizing a fighting tournament. The story was adapted in a limited comic book series published under the short-lived Acclaim Comics imprint. Killer Instinct features several gameplay elements unique to fighting games of the time. Instead of fighting enemies in the best of 3-round bouts, each player has 2 life bars. The player that depletes the other player's life bar wins the match. The game also introduced auto seconds, which allows players to press a certain sequence of buttons to make a characters automatically perform combos on opponents. Also featured in the game are combo breakers, special moves that can interrupt the combos. Critically acclaimed, Killer Instinct was followed by a sequel in 1996 arcade game Killer Instinct 2, later ported to the Nintendo 64 as Killer Instinct Gold, as well as a 2013 revival of the franchise as launch title for the Xbox One. Karate Champ, known in Japan as Karate Do, is a 1984 arcade fighting game developed by Technos Japan for Data East. It is credited with establishing and popularizing the one-on-one fighting game genre. A variety of moves could be performed using a dual joystick controls, using the best of 3 matches format like later fighting games. And it featured training bonus stages. It went on to influence Konami's Yi Kung Fu and other fighting games.
Push a player button. Robot Warrior. Seek and destroy a space planet.
Golf is an arcade game released in 1981 by Midway Manufacturing. Its name was advertised as an acronym for Galactic Orbiting Robot Force. It is a multiple mission fixed shooter with 5 distinct modes of play, essentially making it 5 games in one. It is well known for its use of synthesized speech, a new feature at that time.
Space cadet, you cannot escape the Dorfield robot.
Millipede is a 1982 arcade game by Atari Inc. and is the sequel to the arcade hit Centipede. The objective of the game is to score as many points as possible by destroying all segments of the Millipede as it moves towards the bottom of the screen, as well as destroying and avoiding other enemies. The game is played with a trackball and a single fire button, which can be held down for rapid fire. The game is over when the player's last life is lost. Gyrus is a shoot-'em-up video arcade game developed by Konami and released in 1983. It was designed by Yoshiki Okamoto, who had earlier created Time Pilot for Konami. Gyrus was licensed to Century in the United States and was ported to numerous game consoles and home computers. It follows in the tradition of space war games such as Space Invaders and Galaga. Gyrus is the second and last game of Yoshiki Okamoto designed for Konami after Time Pilot. Due to pay disputes, he was fired after the release of this game and soon joined Capcom, where he would write 1942 and the first Street Fighter game. The game's background music is an electronic fast-paced arrangement. Gyrus is notable for using its stereo sound, which, according to the bonus material for Konami Arcade Classics, was achieved by using a discrete audio circuit. Breakout is an arcade game developed and published by Atari Inc. It was conceptualized by Nolan Bushell and Steve Bristow, influenced by 1972 arcade game Pong, and built by Steve Wozniak and aided by Steve Jobs. The game was ported to multiple platforms and upgraded to video games such as Super Breakout. In addition, Breakout was the basis and inspiration for books, video games, films, and the Apple II personal computer. In the game, a layer of bricks lines the top third of the screen. A ball travels across the screen, bouncing off the top and side walls of the screen. When the brick is hit, the ball bounces away and the brick is destroyed. The player loses a turn when the ball touches the bottom of the screen. To prevent this from happening, the player has a movable paddle to bounce the ball upward, keeping it in play. Time Pilot is a multi-directional scrolling shooter and free-roaming aerial combat arcade game designed by Yoshiki Okamoto, released by Konami in 1982 and distributed in the United States by Century. Debuting in the golden age of video arcade games, it is a time travel themed game that allowed a player's plane to freely move across open airspace that can scroll indefinitely in all directions. The killer list of video games included Time Pilot in the list of top 100 games of all time. This one's on the list, but I'm not sure it was actually an arcade machine. Doom is a 1993 science fiction horror-themed first-person shooter video game by ID Software. It is considered one of the most significant and influential titles in video game industry for having ushered in the popularity of the first-person shooter genre. The original game is divided into 3 9-level episodes and distributed via shareware and mail order. The Ultimate Doom, an updated release of the game featuring the 4th episode, was released in 1995 and sold at retail. In Doom, players assume the role of an unnamed space marine who became popularly known as Doom Guy, fighting his way through hordes of invading demons from hell. With 1/3 of the game, 9 levels, distributed as shareware, Doom was played by an estimated 10 million people within 2 years of its release, popularizing the mode of gameplay and spawning a gaming subculture. In addition to popularizing the first-person shooter genre, it pioneered immersive 3D graphics, networking, multiplayer gaming, and support for customized additions and modifications via package files in a data archive known as WADs. Phoenix is an outer space-themed fixed shooter video game similar to Tato's Space Invaders. It was developed by Amstar Electronics in 1980 and released by Century in the United States and by Taito in Japan. The Phoenix Mothership is one of the first video arcade game bosses to be presented as a separate challenge. This was before the term boss was coined. Choplifter is a 1982 Apple II game developed by Dan Gorlin and published by Borderbound. It was ported to other home computers, and in 1985 Sega released it as a coin-operated arcade game remake, which in turn received several home ports of its own. While many arcade games have been ported to home computers and consumer consoles, Choplifter was one of the few games to take the reverse route, first appearing on the home system and being ported to the arcade. Tekken is a fighting game and the first of the series. It was released at arcades in late 1994 and on the PlayStation in 1995. It was developed and published by Namco. It is succeeded by Tekken II, which came out in 1995. Mr. Do is an arcade game created by Universal in 1982. Similar in some ways to Namco's popular Dig Dug title, Mr. Do was also popular and saw release on a variety of home video game consoles and systems. It was the first game in the Mr. Do series and was released both as a standalone game and as a conversion kit for existing arcade cabinets. It was one of the first arcade games to be released as a conversion kit and went on to sell 30,000 units in the United States. It was remade in Japan as Neo Mr. Do. It was also a popular choice on the 1983 arcade-based game Stargate.
There's been a kidnapping. It's Rachel, the daughter of the president of Sertia. Get into the castle and rescue Rachel.
Sometime, somewhere, someone is plotting a government overthrow. A small republic is in danger. It's time for the one-man army. Richard Miller. She must be dead by now.
Don't come!
Rachel McPherson.
Since you have traveled so very far, be my guest and let me entertain you.
Cherudo Gatto. Just to be sure. Wild Dog.
Time Crisis is a light gun shooter arcade game released by Namco in 1996. It was later ported for the PlayStation in 1997, bundled with the GunCon light gun controller.
Destroying the Imperial rule. This nation will soon be mine. Ah, the taste of revenge is sweet. Your father will pay the price for destroying the Imperial rule. What happened?
We've been invaded.
What?
Never mind. My men will gun him down. There! Shoot him!
Iari Warriors is a vertically scrolling shoot-'em-up arcade game developed by SNK and published in North America and Europe by TradeWest in 1986. Originally titled Ikari in Japan, Iari Warriors was SNK's first major breakthrough US release and became something of a classic. The game was released at the time when there were many Commando clones on the market. What distinguished Iari Warriors were rotary joysticks and the two-player mode. The player characters in Iari Warriors are Colonel Ralph and Second Lieutenant Clark of the later King of the Fighters series, battling through hordes of enemies. According to designer Keiko Zhu, the game was inspired by the popular Rambo films and it takes its name from the Japanese title Rambo First Blood Part 2. Ralph and Clark also make an appearance as playable characters in Metal Slug 6 and Metal Slug 7, as well as the King of Fighters series.
Bingo! Let's go!
Smash TV, known as Super Smash TV on some other version, is a 1990 arcade game created by Eugene Jarvis and Mark Turmel for Williams. It is a run-and-gun game in the same vein as its predecessor, Robotron 2084. As in the previous game, players battle waves of enemies by using guns. The arcade version even uses the two-joystick control system of Robotron. The plot of Smash TV revolves around a futuristic game show in which players compete for various prizes as well as their lives. Home versions were developed for various platforms, most of which were published by Acclaim Entertainment.
Good luck. You'll need it. No way.
Popeye is a 1982 arcade game developed and released by Nintendo, based on the Popeye cartoon characters licensed from King Features Syndicate. In Popeye, 2 players can alternate playing or 1 player can play alone. The top 5 highest scores are kept along with the player's 3 initials. Popeye was available in standard and cocktail configurations. The Popeye character is originally going to be used in the game that later became Donkey Kong. However, at the time of the development of the game, Nintendo could not get the licenses to use the characters. Berserk is a multi-directional shooter video arcade game released in 1980 by Stern Electronics of Chicago.
Intruder alert, chicken. Fight like a robot. Shoot the humanoid. Intruder alert, got the humanoid.
Rise from your grave.
Altered Beast is a 1988 beat-em-up arcade game developed and manufactured by Sega. The game is set in ancient Greece and follows a centurion who is resurrected by Zeus to rescue his daughter Athena, and to do so becomes able to turn into beasts such as the werewolf with the use of power-ups. After initial arcade release, it was ported to several home video game consoles and home computers, including the Sega Mega Drive, for which it was a packing game. The primary designer was Makoto Achida, also responsible for the creation of Golden Axe. Xevious is a vertical scrolling shooter arcade game that was released by Namco in December 1982. It runs on Namco's Galaga hardware. In North America, the game was manufactured and distributed by Atari Inc. In Brazil, the arcade cabinet was printed with the name of Columbia for the game, while the software still showed the original title of Xevious.
Please select a race course. Beginner. Please choose manual automatic transmission. Gentlemen, start your engines.
Daytona USA is a racing video game developed by Sega AM2 and released by Sega, with a limited release in 1993 followed by a full release in 1994. Considered one of the highest grossing arcade games of all time, Daytona USA was Sega's first title to to debut on the Sega Model 2 arcade board, and at the time of release was considered the most visually detailed 3D racing game. Compared to the flat-shaded polygons of its predecessor, Virtual Racing, Daytona's 3D world was fully texture-mapped, giving it a more realistic appearance than the former. Daytona was one of the first video games to feature filtered texture-mapped polygons, giving it the most detailed graphics yet seen in a video game up to that time. In single-player mode, Daytona maintained a consistent 60 frames per second refresh rate, even with multiple opponents on screen, surpassing the motion smoothness of the only other racing game in the comparable graphical area, Namco's Ridge Racing. A slightly updated version of Daytona USA was re-released in arcades in 2010 as Sega Racing Classic. On October 12, 2011, Sega announced that Daytona USA would be coming to Xbox Live and PlayStation Network.
A new winner! Welcome to Victory Lane. You made it!
Tapper, also known as Root Beer Tapper, is a 1983 arcade game released by Ballet Midway. Tapper puts the player in the shoes of a bartender who must serve eager, thirsty patrons before their patience expires while collecting empty mugs and tips. Elevator Action is a 1983 arcade game by Taito. It debuted during the golden age of arcade games. The player assumes the role of a spy who infiltrates the building filled with elevators. He must collect secret documents from the building and traverse the 30 floors of the building using an increasingly complex series of elevators. The player is pursued by enemy agents who appear from behind closed doors. These agents must be dealt with via force or evasion. Successful completion of a level involves collecting all the secret documents and traversing the building from top to bottom. In the lower floors of the building, the elevator systems are so complex that some puzzle-solving skills are needed. The game was available as a standard upright cabinet. The controls consist of a 4-way joystick and 2 buttons, one for shoot and the other for jumping and kicking. The maximum number of players is 2, alternating turns. The graphics are extremely simple. 2D color graphics and in-game music was composed by musician Yoshio Imamura. The game was followed by a sequel, Elevator Action 2. Kung Fu Master is a side-scrolling action game produced by Irem that was originally released as an arcade game in 1984 and distributed by Data East in North America. The game was initially released in Japan under the title of Spartan X as a tie-in based on the Jackie Chan film Wheels on Meals. However, the game has no bearing to the plot of that film outside the names of the protagonist and his girlfriend, allowing Irem to export the game without license by simply changing the title. The player controls Thomas, the titular Kung Fu Master, as he fights his way through 5 levels of the Devil's Temple in order to rescue his girlfriend Sylvia from the mysterious crime boss Mr. X. It is considered to be one of the precursors to the beat-em-up genre. Marble Madness is an arcade video game designed by Chuck Cerny and published by Atari Games in 1984. The player uses a trackball to guide the on-screen marble through 6 obstacle-filled courses within a time limit. Marble Madness was Atari's first game to use the Atari System 1 hardware and be programmed in C programming language. It was also the first game to use true stereo sound. Previous games used either monoreal sound or simulated stereo. Cerny drew inspiration from miniature golf racing games and artwork by MC Aisha. He applied a minimalist approach by designing the appearance of the game's courses and enemies. Marble Madness was commercially successful. The game was ported to numerous platforms and inspired the development of other games. A sequel was developed and planned for release in 1991 but cancelled when location testing showed the game could not compete with other titles. Arkanoid is an arcade game developed by Taito in 1986. It's expanded upon Atari's Breakout games of the 70s by adding power-ups, different types of bricks, and a variety of level layouts. The title refers to a doomed mothership from which the player's ship, the Vorse, escapes. Moon Patrol is an arcade by Irem and was first released in 1982. It was licensed to Williams for distribution in North America. Moon Patrol was an early side-scrolling shooter and widely credited for the introduction of parallax scrolling in side-scrolling video games. Battlezone is an arcade game from Atari released in November 1980. It displays a wireframe view on a horizontal black and white vector monitor. Due to its novel gameplay and look, this game was very popular for many years.
Asshole.